1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. Book 2, Chapter 21. Aomame. What should I do? That night, Aomame stepped out onto the balcony in her slippers and grey jersey workout clothes to look at the moons. She was holding a cup of cocoa. It was the first time in a very long time that she felt like drinking cocoa. But the sight of a can of Van Houten cocoa in a kitchen cabinet had suddenly inspired her. 2 moons, a big one and a little one, hung in the perfectly clear southwestern sky. Instead of sighing, she produced a tiny moan. A daughter had been born from an air chrysalis, and now there were 2 moons. 1984 had changed to 1Q84. The old world had vanished, and she could never get back to it. Sitting on the balcony's garden chair, taking little sips of hot cocoa and looking at the 2 moons through narrowed eyes, Aomame tried to recall things from the old world. All she could bring back at the moment, however, was the potted rubber plant that she had left in her apartment. Where could it be now? Was Tamaro looking after it as he had promised? Of course, there's nothing to worry about, Aomame told herself. Tamaro is a man who keeps his word. He might kill you without hesitation if necessary, but even so, he would care for your rubber plant to the end. But why am I so concerned about that rubber plant? Aomame had barely thought about the thing until the day she left it behind in her apartment. It was nothing but a sad-looking rubber plant, its color pale and dull, its poor health obvious at a glance. It had carried a 1,800 yen price tag in a special sale, but the cashier had further dropped the price to 1,500 yen without being asked, and if Aomame had bargained, it might have gotten cheaper still. It had obviously remained unsold for a long time, and all the way home she had regretted having bought it on impulse, but not only because it was sad-looking, bulky and hard to carry, but because it was a living thing. That was the first time in her life that she owned something alive. Whether a pet or a potted plant, she had never bought one or received one or found one. The rubber plant was her very first experience of living with a thing that had a life of its own. The moment she had seen the 2 little red goldfish in the living room and heard from the dowager that she had bought them for Tsubasa at a night stall in a street fair, Aomame had wanted to have her own fish, badly. She could hardly keep her eyes off them. Where had this desire come from all of a sudden? Perhaps she felt envious of Tsubasa. No one had ever bought Aomame anything at a street fair, or even taken her to one. Ardent members of the Society of Witnesses, faithful in every way to the teachings of the Bible, her parents had disdained and avoided all the secular world's festivals. And so Aomame had made up her mind to go to a discount store near the station in her Jiyugaoka neighborhood and buy a goldfish. If no one was going to buy her a goldfish and bowl, then she would do it herself. I'm a grown-up. I'm 30 years old and I live in my own apartment. I've got bricks of money piled up in my safe deposit box. I don't have to ask anyone's permission to buy myself a damned goldfish. But when she went to the pet department and saw actual goldfish swimming in the tank, their lacy fins waving, Aomame felt incapable of buying one. She could not help but feel that paying money to take ownership of a living organism was inappropriate. It made her think, too, of her own young self. The goldfish was powerless, trapped in a small glass bowl, unable to go anywhere. This fact did not appear to bother the goldfish itself. It probably had nowhere it wanted to go. But to Aomame, this was a matter of genuine concern. She had felt none of this when she saw the two goldfish in the dowager's living room. They had appeared to be enjoying themselves, swimming in their glass bowl so elegantly, the summer light rippling through the water. Living with the goldfish seemed like a wonderful thought. It should add a certain richness to her life. But the sight of the goldfish in the pet department of the discount store by the station only made Aomame feel short of breath. No, it's out of the question. I can't possibly keep a goldfish. What caught her eye at that point was the rubber plant, over in a corner of the store. It seemed to have been shoved into the least noticeable spot in the place, hiding like an abandoned orphan, or at least it appeared so to Aomame. It was lacking in color and sheen, and its shape was out of kilter, but with hardly a thought in her head, she bought it. Not because she liked it, but because she had to buy it. And in fact, even after she brought it home and set it down, she hardly looked at it except on those rare occasions when she watered it. Once she had left it behind, however, and realized that she would never see it again. Aomame couldn't stop herself from worrying about the plant. She frowned hugely, the way she often did when she wanted to scream out loud in confusion, stretching every muscle in her face until she looked like a completely different person. When she had finished distorting her face into every possible angle, Aomame finally returned it to normal. Why am I so concerned about that rubber plant? In any case, I know for sure that Tamaru will treat the plant well. He is used to loving and caring for living things. Unlike me, he treats his dogs like second selves. He even uses his spare time to go through the dowager's garden, inspecting her plants in great detail. When he was in the orphanage, he risked his own life to protect a younger boy with impaired abilities. I could never do anything like that, Aomame thought. I can't afford to take responsibilities for others' lives. It's all I can do to bear the weight of my own life and my own loneliness. Loneliness reminded Aomame of Ayumi. Some man had handcuffed her to a bed in a love hotel, violently raped her, and strangled her to death with a bathrobe sash. As far as Aomame knew, the perpetrator had not been taken into custody. Ayumi had a family and colleagues, but she was lonely. So lonely that she had to experience such a horrible death. Still, I wasn't there for her. She wanted something from me, that was certain. But I had my own secrets, and my own loneliness that had to be protected. I could never share them with Ayumi. Why did she choose me, of all people, when there are so many others in this world? Aomame closed her eyes and pictured the potted rubber plant that she had left in her empty apartment. Why am I so concerned about that rubber plant? Aomame spent the next several minutes crying. What's wrong with me? She wondered, shaking her head. I'm crying too much these days. Crying was the last thing she wanted to do, but she couldn't stop the tears. Her shoulders trembled. I've got nothing left. Anything of value I ever possessed has disappeared. One thing after another, everything is gone, except for the warmth of my memory of Tengo. I've got to stop this crying, Aomame told herself. Here I am, inside of Tengo, like the scientists in Fantastic Voyage. Yes, that's it. The movie's title was Fantastic Voyage. Satisfied that she had recalled the title, Aomame calmed down and stopped crying. No matter how many tears I shed, it's not going to solve anything. I've got to go back to being the cool, tough Aomame. Who wants that to happen? I want that to happen. She looked at her surroundings. There were still 2 moons in the sky. That will be a sign. Watch the sky with great care, one of the little people, the small-voiced one, had said. Ho ho, said the keeper of the beat. Just then, Aomame noticed something. She was not the only person looking up at the moons. She could see a young man in the playground across the street. He was sitting on top of the slide and looking in the same direction that she was. He is seeing 2 moons, just like me, she knew intuitively. No mistake, he's looking at what I'm looking at. He can tell there are 2 moons in this world. But Leader had said that not everyone living in this world can see both moons. There was no room for doubt. This large young man was looking at a pair of moons in the sky. I'd bet anything on that. I can tell. He's sitting there looking at the big yellow moon and the small, lopsided, greenish, mossy-colored moon. He appears to be thinking hard about their meaning. Could he too have drifted into 1Q84? Maybe he is confused, unable to grasp the meaning of this new world. Yes, that must be it. That must be why he had to climb to the top of that slide in this playground at night, staring at the moons all alone, mentally listing all the possibilities, all the hypotheses he could think of, and examining them in detail. But no, that must not be it at all. He could be working for Sakigake. He could be here looking for me. The thought set Aomame's heart racing, her right hand unconsciously reaching for the automatic pistol in her waistband, tightening on its hard grip. It was impossible, though, to find any sense of tension or urgency in the man on the slide. There was nothing about him that suggested violence. He was just sitting up there alone, his head against the handrail, looking straight up at the moons in the sky, absorbed in his own thoughts. Aomame was on her 3rd-story balcony, and he was down below. She sat in the garden chair, looking down at the man through the gap between the balcony's opaque plastic screen and the metal railing. Even if he were to look up toward Aomame, he would probably not be able to see her. But in any case, the man appeared to be completely engrossed, staring at the sky without the slightest sense that someone might be staring at him. Aomame calmed herself down and quietly released the breath that she was holding in. She relaxed the tension in her fingers and took her hand from the pistol. Maintaining her position, she continued to observe the man. From her vantage point, she could only see his profile. The playground's mercury vapor lamp cast its bright light on him from above. He was a tall man with broad shoulders. He had a stiff-looking head of hair, cut short, and he wore a long-sleeved t-shirt, its sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Not exactly handsome, but he had good, solid features, and the shape of his head was not bad. If he were a little older and his hair thinning, he would be quite nice looking. Then Aomame suddenly knew. It was Tengo. No, she thought, that couldn't possibly be. She gave her head several short, sharp shakes. No, I must be wrong. Things don't work out like that. She found it impossible to breathe normally. Her body wasn't working right. Thought and action refused to sync. I've got to take another good look at him, she thought, but for some reason she couldn't get her eyes to focus. Something seemed to be causing the vision of her right and left eyes to become hugely different all of a sudden. She unconsciously twisted her features out of shape. What should I do? She got out of the garden chair and looked around helplessly. Then she recalled that there had been a small pair of Nikon binoculars in the sideboard, and she went in to get them. She hurried back to the balcony, holding the binoculars and looking at the slide. The young man was still there, in the same position, in profile, looking at the sky. With trembling fingers, she focused the binoculars and looked at his profile close up, holding her breath, concentrating. No doubt about it, it was Tengo. 20 years might have gone by, but she knew for sure it could not be anyone but Tengo. What most surprised Aomame was that Tengo's appearance had hardly changed from the time he was 10, as if the 10-year-old boy had aged directly into a 30-year-old man. This was not to say that he looked childish. His body and his head were, of course, far bigger than they used to be, and his features were now those of an adult. His facial expression had a new depth to it. His hands resting on his knees were big and strong, very different from the hand she had grasped in that elementary school classroom 20 years ago. Even so, the aura projected by his physical presence was the same. His solid, massive body gave her a deep, natural sense of warmth and security. She felt a strong desire to press her cheek against his chest, and that filled her with joy. He was sitting on a playground slide, looking at the sky, staring hard at exactly the same things that she was looking at. The 2 moons. Yes, it is possible for us to see the same things. What should I do? Aomame had no idea what to do next. She set the binoculars in her lap and clenched her fists, tightly enough for her nails to leave marks on her skin. Her clenched fists were trembling slightly. What should I do? She listened to her labored breathing. Before she knew it, her body seemed to have split down the middle. One half was willing to accept the fact that Tengo was right there in front of her. The other half refused to accept it, trying to convince itself that this was not happening. Inside her, these 2 forces clashed, each trying to drag her in its own direction. It was as if every bit of her flesh was being shredded, her joints torn apart, her bones smashed. Aomame wanted to run straight to the playground, climb the slide and speak to Tengo there. But what should she say? She didn't know how to move the muscles of her mouth. Could she manage to squeeze out a few words? My name is Aomame. I held your hand in an elementary school classroom in Ichikawa 20 years ago. Do you remember me? Is that what she should say? There should be something a little better. The other Aomame gave her an order. Stay hidden on this balcony. There's nothing more you can do. You know that. You struck a bargain with the leader last night. You would save Tengo and help him to go on living in this world by throwing away your own life. That was the gist of your bargain. The contract had been concluded. You have sent leader to the other world and agreed to offer your own life. What good would it do you now to see Tango and talk about the past? And what would you do if he didn't remember you? Or if he knew you only as that strange girl who used to say the creepy prayers? Then how would you feel as you went to your death? The thought made her go stiff all over. She began to shiver uncontrollably, as if she had caught a bad cold and might freeze to the core. She hugged herself for a time, shivering, but never once did she take her eyes off Tango, sitting on top of the slide and looking at the sky. He might disappear somewhere the moment she looked away from him. She wanted Tango to hold her in his arms, to caress her with his big hands. She wanted her whole body to feel his warmth, to have him stroke her from head to toe and warm her up. I want him to take away this chill I feel in my body's core. Then I want him to come inside me and stir me with all his might, like a spoon in a cup of cocoa, slowly to the very bottom. If he would do that for me, I wouldn't mind dying right then and there, really. No, can that be really true? Oh, Mummy thought, if that really happened, I might not want to die anymore. I might want to stay with him forever and ever. My resolve to die might simply evaporate, like a drop of dew in the morning sun. Or then again, I might feel like killing him, shooting him first with a Heckler and Koch, and then blowing my own brains out. I can't begin to predict what would happen or what I would be capable of. What should I do? Our Mommy could not decide. Her breathing became harsh. A jumble of thoughts came to her, one after another, tangled thoughts, defying all her attempts to impose order upon them. What was right? What was wrong? She knew only one thing for sure. She wanted those thick arms of his to be holding her right now. What happened after that would happen. Let God or the devil decide. Our Mommy made up her mind. She went to the bathroom and wiped away the traces of her tears. She looked in the mirror and swiftly straightened her hair. Her face was an absolute mess. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her outfit was terrible. Faded jersey workout clothes with a weird bulge in the back where she had a 9mm automatic pistol shoved into her waistband. This was no way to present herself to the man for whom she'd been burning with desire for 20 years. Why wasn't she wearing something a little more decent? But it was too late. She had no time to be changing clothes. She slipped on a pair of sneakers and ran down 3 floors on the condo building's emergency stairway, crossed the street, entered the empty playground, and walked to the slide, where there was no sign of Tango. Bathed in the artificial light of the mercury vapor lamp, the top of the slide was deserted, darker, colder, and emptier than the far side of the moon. Could it have been a hallucination? No, it was no hallucination, our Mommy told herself, out of breath. Tango was there until a moment ago, without a doubt. She climbed to the top of the slide and stood there, looking all around. No sign of anybody, but he could not have gone very far. He was here until a few minutes ago, 4 or 5 minutes at the most. If I run, I should be able to catch up with him. But our Mommy changed her mind. She stopped herself almost by force. No, I can't do that. I don't even know which way he walked from here. I don't want to be running aimlessly around the streets of Koenji at night. That is not something I should be doing. While Aomame had hesitated on the balcony, wondering what she should do, Tango had climbed down from the slide and left. Come to think of it, this is the fate I had been handed. I hesitated and momentarily lost my powers of judgment, And in that time, Tango went away. That is what happened to me. It's just as well this way, our mommy told herself. It's probably the best thing that could have happened. At least I succeeded in finding Tango. I saw him just across the street. I trembled with the possibility of having his arms around me. If only for a few moments I was able to taste that intense joy and anticipation. She closed her eyes and grasped the slide handrail, biting her lip. Our mommy sat down on top of the slide in the same posture that Tango had adopted. She looked up at the southwestern sky, where the two moons, large and small, hung side by side. Until only moments ago, she had been watching Tango from the balcony of her apartment, where her deep hesitation seemed to be lingering still. 1Q84. That is the name given to this world. I entered it 6 months ago without meaning to, and now I am about to leave it quite deliberately. Tango will stay here after I am gone. I have no idea, of course, what kind of world it will be for Tango. There is no way I can see it through to the end. But so what? I'm going to die for him. I was unable to live for myself. That possibility had already been stripped from me. Instead, I will be able to die for him. That is enough. I can die smiling. This is no lie. Our mommy struggled to feel whatever hint of Tango's presence might be left at the top of the slide. But no warmth of any kind remained there. The night wind, with its presentiment of autumn, cut through the leaves of the Zelkova tree, removing all traces of Tango. Even so, our mommy went on sitting there, looking up at the moons, bathed in their odd, emotionless light. The city's sounds blended together into one urban noise surrounding her with its basso continuo. She thought of the little spiders that had spun their webs on the emergency stairway of the Metropolitan Expressway. Were those spiders still alive and maintaining their webs? She smiled. I'm ready, she thought. I've made my preparations. But there was one place she would have to visit first. End of chapter.